Welcome, Bone Ponies, and we got a special update for you today as we're talking Tales of Drakuva. Bow, bow, bow. Of course, we got the three-piece tendy here. Who we got?
Cody.
Yeah.
Steven.
Nice. And, of course, myself, Neil. Today we got a special guest on. Goes by many names. Some Shawnimal, some Shawn. And that's... for the most part, all of them, you know.
It's pretty
That's
much
about it. That's about it.
yeah. Not Chris.
Not Chris.
Not the other one.
Yeah, I refer to that.
The
a
chosen
lot.
one.
Right.
But anyway, no, we got Shawn here. He has purchased one of our previous adventures, actually handcrafted for him, Getru's Grimoire, which a lot of people out there really liked, and he was nice enough. He purchased it through us and then said, hey, let people have it if they want it. So
yeah, and I think to date it's our most downloaded adventure, at least on Drive-Thru RPG it is.
that's true.
Yeah, I believe that's
which
true.
Is cool.
It's no cult classic, but it's
not sewer goblins.
Yeah, it's no sewer goblins. But
it's the gold standard.
Well,
Yeah.
it's because it's got gobby gobs.
Because it's a classic.
True.
You don't need a reason. You don't need a reason for why Sewer Goblins is a classic. It just is a
It
classic.
just is.
Yeah.
Just by its inherent nature, it's a
But
classic.
anyway, we can talk sewer gobs all day, but we're here to talk Tales of Drakuva. And Shawnimal, you got some questions for us, so I guess I'll just pass the mic over to you figuratively. You can just swing this.
Hot mic.
Start her off.
So we're gonna start this off by I'm just gonna ask what each of you are most excited about this package that you're putting out. I guess, do we want to start with Cody?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I can.
Just one thing, Cody. Just one
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Not too
you
many pros.
long-winded. I know. My impenetrable wall of text. I would say I am most excited. Certainly, I really enjoy like all the creatures and everything we've made. The spells and everything we've made are cool. But I would say probably the 11th mission in this adventure book. It's a dungeon crawl through a tower. Is probably the thing I'm most excited about because it's pretty brutal. Number one, there's a lot of cool traps in there, a lot of cool creatures and things like that. But it's something that I think I probably spent the most amount of time on for this book, and I think that people are going to have a good time with it. I think it could be its own standalone thing, similar to like our Forsaken Sepulchre.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that's probably the mission that the part of the book that I'm looking forward to the most, is see what people think about that.
Okay. Steven?
Well, like last time that you spoke to me, unlike having just one thing, I have a whole list of 17 different things. I'm interested most in seeing how the community reacts to the overall world that we're presenting, and the there's a lot of cool new stuff in this that we're introducing. It's sort of like an introduction to our world, and it's just I think that there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that people look at this and read about and see that, like, you know, there's a ton of new monsters, there's a ton of new spells. Like, you know, we talked about it in the last update, but there's like a whole new school of magic. There's a whole new class that has its own unique magic system, and I think that it's kind of like the start of something like really, really cool that we've been putting a lot of time into, and I am very interested to see both like how the community reacts to it and also where the where things go after this project releases.
Sure. Good answer.
Yeah, that was a good
A lot of pressure on Neil for this.
Yeah,
you know?
there's a lot of pressure now because, like, you know, Steve hit a big part, and that last tower is gonna be crazy. We've ran it multiple times play testing it to see how people react, and each time something separate becomes more deadly, and we're like, well, I guess we gotta increase that level. I would say probably my favorite part about this project is how we designed the adventures. So yeah, we give you, hey, this adventure is for level, 1 to 2 characters, then 2 to, 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 7, 7 to 8 type of thing. But really, we allow you to manipulate that wherever you see fit. So say, yeah, we have these, 11 adventures that go chronologically in order, but your party gets distracted by one of these other guilds. We encourage you to do that. We write it very much in that way. We try and give you as much information in Thistledown to develop it your own. We want each session, each group that you play this with, to experience the world differently, because it is different. It is very fast-paced, moving, chaotic. And I think that's what I'm really excited to see people enjoy, is that aspect of, oh, okay, yeah, I can run this just like, a pre-made adventure, or I can kind of make this story my own. I can fit in a small mini quest in between everything and not mess up the story, right? So I think that's pretty good, and actually it'll help draw the characters into the storyline more, because now they become, pillars of it. They become part of that foundation of the story, instead of these random people just being put in there and now they're at, the hero saving level.
Yeah, and I think that's something, just to add on to what Neil said, is I think that parties that play through this, they stand to become a very big part of the city of Thistledown, depending on what route they choose. I mean, they can help stop all the things that are going on in the city. They can fix things. They could be a part of some of the problems that are going on in the city. The 11 missions that we have in the book, yes, they pertain to what's going on in the city, and the actions of the players are going to directly affect like the different guilds and things like that. But it's not the only thing that's happening in the city. So our 11 missions is something that people could play through as its own campaign. You can pick and choose. You can throw them in as just different encounters. You can use Thistledown as a setting as opposed to just a campaign. And I think that is, like what Neil is saying, I think that's a big part of what we're doing is, we're trying to encourage people to take this and make it their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trying to give you a good foundation, but also we're trying to give you something that, hey, if you don't have time to make all this stuff, or you don't want to, it is its own campaign that you could play through straight through.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, there's quests that you have to. One of the 11 missions, you're working with an organization called the Hall of Heroes, and when you complete that mission, we have a suggestion of the Hall of Heroes could then contact your party to, hunt monsters or perform other tasks in the town, and we don't say what those tasks are. That's kind of up to the Overlord to sort of come up with what those tasks are, so sort of customize the adventure to match what your players want. And that's more about creating Thistledown as more of a setting than an adventure. Mm-hmm. Although, like, you're obviously more than welcome to play it as the full adventure that we present, but there's also the option of just having Thistledown as a setting and saying, okay, well, this quest with the Hall of Heroes, I want to get my players involved into some kind of a guild, but I don't really have any idea of how to do that. So we have this guild, we have a guild leader, we have like their whole what they're all about and things like that. And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to have my players play this quest on its own as its own thing, and that'll get them into this guild. And then from there, I can use this guild as a quest giver, basically, for my party.
Quest
so that
giver,
way,
base of operations, anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that way it provides the Overlord with that resource of, this is a group that, like, if the Overlord doesn't have time to create a guild, or they're not good at creating a guild, it gives them the ability to have something to just turn to as an option to utilize in their own game.
Yeah, and I think that's part of just the last thing I'd say about the guilds is that yes, they're present in the different missions, and they're something that you can be involved in. There's something that you can oppose. But what we really try to do is we try to just give you outside of the missions, we try to give you a block of like motivations and things that this guild is interested in, or what their realm of control is within the city, so that you as the overlord can then say, hey, well, the Chaos Consortium is perfect for my rogue, and I want, I'm going to have missions that aren't in the book. I'm going to come up with something for them, for this character that I have in my game. So we just try to give you, like I said before, is some building blocks. Even though it is its own campaign, there's building blocks there that you can add to it or take away from it, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, we give you that, top of the iceberg, but if you decide to go underneath the water, you're going to be able to develop so much more and really bring it to whatever you want it to be in your setting, Because as much as this is ours, we created it, once you purchase it, it's yours. It's yours to use however you see fit at your table. We just hope that, it helps you along the way.
Sure. So that actually leads into what I was going to ask next, which was about these 11 adventures that you guys have put together. But it sounds like, I guess just to sum up those first points, it sounds like you have created this area of Thistledown, this setting that can be used as a setting if people want to use it as a setting, but it can also be played as an adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yep, that's exactly right.
All right. So you have these 11 settings or 11 adventures in Thistledown. All of this groundwork for guilds, things going on. What can someone who purchases this, what can they expect to find in Thistledown?
Oof.
as far as what the guilds want, or
just in general,
just in general, what yeah.
So the thing about Thistledown is
just moved to Thistledown. What neighborhood should I live in?
Well, if you move to Thistledown, you will find that people in Thistledown experience pretty good standard of living in comparison to other places. That most people live above, the poverty line in Thistledown. There's more magic, there's more technology in Thistledown than there are in other places in the area. Thistledown has basically become the jewel of civilization in Drakuva after the collapse of the Dwarven Empire, which happened 2,000 years prior. So, as far as what people can expect, though, is that Thistledown is like a lot of developing nations and a lot of empires that have come before it. There's tension, and there's a real it's kind of a tinderbox between the way things have been run, where the existing government that's in place, versus how the guilds now want to get involved, how they want to have their own roles in the government, and in saying what happens in Thistledown. There's also outside influences. There's monsters, there's extraplanar influences that are causing havoc. So there's no shortage of things that people can get involved in. And we try to leave it so that really, if you wanted just to play Thistledown as a city, you don't have a shortage of things that you could throw into the mix that the players can be involved in for good or bad.
Yeah, like we talk about how like there's all kinds of like automatons and airships and things that are being developed in the city, but there's also like a lot of magical stuff. Like there's portals that lead into the Ageless Realm, which is our version of the Feywild, and like a bunch of other stuff that's just going on. So there's all kinds of things that you can introduce into your campaign. There like the first mission in the game is you going up against a couple of like little minor like demons, basically. So there's some of that influence as well. Like there's like a whole there's it's a big city, it's a big playground where you can just throw any kind of magic or technology problem or political problem that you want to, and you can pretty much do whatever you want in terms of what kind of a story you want to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's politics. There's I'm the noble who runs Thistledown, or traditionally ran Thistledown, and I have a say in things. Then there's also the guilds that are coming up to say, well, hey, we are all of the merchants, we're all of the businesses, and we're together, and this is our stance on things. Or we're a group that represents all of the farmers and all of the farms outside of Thistledown that feed Thistledown. This is what we want. And so there are, there's that level of motivations that you could really come up with a lot of different things. And we try to touch on every group, and at least not every group is present in all of the missions, but we do at least say, hey, this person might be interested in this, or this group would be interested in you doing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Or while traveling through the town, you see that this group is actively paying for these monsters from the Ageless Realm, for evidence of things that are coming through from the Ageless Realm.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I would almost say what you would find out being a resident of Thistledown, and kind of one of the cool things that we do with the start of this adventure is pretty much the city is what you would believe it to be when you first come in. Yeah, there's a little bit of chaotic stuff. Nothing really seems to be connected. It just seems to be hustling and bustling. And as you start to live in the city longer, you start to become a part of the city, you start finding out about certain nefarious plots, certain things that at first, when you first were there, oh yeah, that doesn't, that's nothing. That's just normal. There's a thieves guild here. Well, there's something deeper under that. Oh, that's nothing. Those imps were really, it happens. They're like rats. Well, why did they get attracted? There's a reason behind that. So as you start to, journey through these adventures, you start to realize, oh, these aren't just random events. Oh no, my tapestry fell down behind me. Kurgan down. But these aren't just random events happening in Thistledown. They start to become, you can start, slowly putting that puzzle together. And it's pretty, I'd almost say it's pretty involved if your characters want to make it that involved. We leave it up to you. We give you the breadcrumbs. It's up to you to find the witch.
Sure. So, as with and I think we've all played at least one module that's been pre-made, where we can all agree that sometimes with pre-made modules, the conductor can get a little out of control. Mm-hmm. It sounds more like at least in your creation, your baby, mm-hmm. That you've left a lot of it open for the players to go explore, do, but you've laid that groundwork foundation, whatever you want to call it, that they can use.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what a lot of people struggle with pre-mades, and what our group has struggled with, and talking to many others, their groups, is the fact that you get stuck in this aspect of telling such a complete story that isn't yours. You can't follow, you get lost in it. You will naturally always try, when you're overlording, to make the story yours. It's just kind of natural human aspects. We try and leave it so, yeah, you have all of the information, everything's there, but you're not forced to follow it exactly. We try and hold your hand through it, but really it's your journey, it's your adventure, it's your missions.
Yeah. So we from some of the complaints that we've taken from people, whether it's on Reddit or from just our own experiences with pre-mades, oftentimes it's very hard to, your players might ask you something and you might not have gotten to that point in the book yet, or you might not remember where something is, and you're flipping through the book and you're panicking and you don't know what's going on. And so one of the things that we tried to do, because it was a big complaint we saw with like Candlekeep Mysteries and things like that, is that people had to sit down and basically read through the entire mission to figure out what was going on. And so one of the things we try to do to alleviate that is that at the beginning of our missions, there's an overview of what takes place. And it's for the Overlord to see that, okay, this is going to involve 4 to 5 players. They're going to do this. There's going to be several encounters, and then there's going to be some sort of magical reward or whatever. And then it goes into the story, like the lore of what's going on. And then throughout the actual missions that we've written, these adventures, there's several spots where we kind of break up what's being written or what's being told, and we have Overlord notes that are specifically for the Overlord to say, hey, we have written that this is what's going on, but these are the things that you can do, or you can take it your own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not just trying to be like, oh, figure it out, you know. We're not trying to say like, oh, we left things intentionally blank as like being lazy. No, we've written a full story. We have a full campaign, and we walk you through that. But all the while, we're encouraging you to say, hey, if you don't like this, you can change this.
Yeah.
If you, because I think that's something that we've seen happen with, especially with younger players and younger DMs or overlords, whatever, is that they think that they have to follow everything that's written in the book. They have to follow the story that's written. They have to read the narrative block out loud to their group in order for it to make sense or in order for it to be fun. And that's just not true. You could have 2 pages of narration that you're supposed to read, and your players couldn't give less of a shit about it. And then what happens? You sit there and you read through it. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to give you the tools that you can make this story your own, that you can make it enjoyable for your group, because you cannot foresee what every table's going to have, what every group is going to have, what that dynamic is, or what they need. And it's just like when I talk about, like in our different podcasts, I talk about all the time about not planning things out 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you plan something at 100%, you don't leave yourself wiggle room.
Yeah.
You have this thing all laid out. You have all the bullet points in your head of what has to happen. And when something inevitably goes wrong, you're left there being like, well, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
Where if you have that wiggle room, you can say, okay, this is the way my players are going. I'm going to steer it into that.
Yep.
This is what my table wants. I can pick up, this is what my table wants. So I'm going to direct the story that way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've done with these missions, I believe.
No, I think you're right, because when we get to those those decision points where some people lock in, no matter what, this is what you got to do. That's when we give you options. That's when we say, hey, this is what we thought the story would take. This is what we would think would be interesting, but you could also do it this, and this way, or however you see fit. So even when we leave those open, we give you 3 other choices to help fit in at your table, and then we go, or you may know better, because we can't plan for everything is the idea. And we don't want to lock you into what we want, because it might not work. We want it to be enjoyable for everybody.
Yeah, and I've had experiences. I mean, I ran Tomb of Annihilation, and there was several things in Tomb of Annihilation that the book called for you to do, or the story told you to do, that I looked at it and was like, my players are never going to want to do this. They're never going to have any interest in this, or this is not enough for them to take this quest. There has to be something else. And so I honestly spent a lot of time building up the very first city that the players make it to, Port Nyanzaru, and getting them established with people there and making relationships with different NPCs, so that when something happened, the players gave a shit.
Yeah. Because
as it stands, as the book is written, you show up basically from overseas and you're just like, yeah, I'm here to save the day.
Yeah.
And like, it didn't mesh. And I think the way that we run our games and the way that we've written this campaign is indicative to how we grew up playing these games, because we didn't have modules. We made up our own worlds. We made up our own campaigns. We only got into modules as adults.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I mean, I could be pretty critical of them. I mean, some of them are very good. There's other stuff where I'm just like, why would they do this? But
well, I think it comes into the aspect that we've all believed that when you're sitting down to play one of these TTRPGs, you as the Overlord are not writing a novel. We strongly believe this is a storytelling process that involves the whole table. And I think
collaborative storytelling.
Yeah. And I think that is the difference between what we offer in all of our adventures, all of our books, and what this book especially brings to the table compared to your regular Wizards of the Coast pre-made. Wizards of the Coast pre-made, they're giving you a story to tell. We are giving you, an overview, almost like the mythology around something, but it is your people experiencing it that are telling that story. I would think that's the biggest difference between our book and what another pre-made adventure would be.
Yeah, and also we took into consideration the complaints of what we've seen in the community, and we try to lay things out so that you don't get halfway through something and realize my players don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Or this doesn't make any sense for my game, or something happens in the mission that just derails what you were going to do.
Yeah.
We try to lay it all out in the beginning of like the very first paragraph you read of every adventure says this is what's happening, and it's for this book is really it's for the Overlord.
Yes.
Yeah,
It is a setting book. It is also there's a campaign involved in it, but really it's for the Overlord, and it's also for people that maybe are not fully comfortable in their role as being the Overlord, or maybe want more practice, because we try to encourage you to use your role to make this more enjoyable and more collaborative and more fun.
Yeah, I feel like when we were writing this, we were trying to take like newer overlords or people who don't have a lot of experience doing it into consideration when we were developing this stuff, which is why there's so many notes and why everything is so kind of modular and able to be adjusted, and we provide all these tips for, if you don't want things to go this way, they can go that way. And even if you were to look at a quest and go, like, I don't like the way that this goes, you could, like, someone could still look at it and go, well, I like the beginning of this, like the concept of this is cool, but I don't like where it goes going forward. But it gives you kind of an option to say, like, here are some ideas of what you could do instead of what we have written as the story to, make it your own thing and adjust it that way, versus like you just have to stick to the story and whatever. And again, all these stories could easily be run individually, completely separately from each other. So if you like the sixth mission in our book, but you don't like anything before it and you don't like anything after it, but you think that that would be a good starting point for your characters to play in, for your players to start from, you could play that and then go from there and say, okay, well, this was just the beginning of this adventure that I have in Thistledown, or if you don't even want it to take place in Thistledown, it can take place in your own city, and it's just an idea that you got from our book, and you can go from there, and you can change the story however you want, and you can, go forward however you want from there. So I feel like that's another big strength of this.
So it sounds to me as though this has been written so that it can be a inexperienced game master or someone who's been overlording for as long as Cody.
Yeah.
But that either way you go with it, it's not like you have everything written out for you. If you're someone who's been jamming for so long that you are just annoyed with the way it's telling you to do everything. And if you're a new person, you have enough detail and helpful notes to make sure that you can feel a little more confident in it.
Yeah, that's the total goal. It's for anybody that wants to run a game. You could, if you're experienced, like you said, somebody that's done it for a long time, is very comfortable with the improv aspect and the making things go on the fly. you could use this because we've essentially given you a bunch of building blocks that you can take and I like this character, I like this monster, I'm going to throw it over here, or I like this plot line and I'm going to do something with it later. Maybe not follow the campaign in a linear sense, maybe I want to have this happen now, or whatever. But we also try to help the people that are maybe new to it because D&D has a huge influx of new players. It's the most popular that it's ever been. There's tons of people that are getting into the game, and there's tons of people that are trying to learn how to run the game. And having witnessed people struggle with pre-mades and running their games as first time DMs, I think that we've done a good job at alleviating that. Where, yes, you can run it as written. There's enough detail, there's enough story there that you can run it as its own game, or you can change things as you need to, or as your players call on it to change, because that is something is we love role playing and these games as a collaborative storytelling effort. And what Neil said before about how the Overlord or the DM shouldn't be writing their novel, it's true. You shouldn't be running your friends through the novel you have in your head, because you have everything figured out in your head. You have how it's going to happen, how it's going to end. It leaves no chance for the actual players to influence that world or to change it, to change the story. And we're very opposite of it. We think that you should, the camera lens should be on the players. The players are the heroes in this situation. And the things that they do should matter and should affect the world that you're in.
Yeah.
And we try to keep that all in mind how we have this written.
That makes sense. Okay. So we'll go back to my earlier question of I've just moved to Thistledown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out exploring the town. I see there's all these guilds. There's some shady underlings, possibly some imps. What do I see in my neighborhood? What kind of individuals?
Well,
What can I expect out of the folk?
So we have Thistledown would be certainly a melting pot place where it would be calling people from all over Drakuva, because it's the largest city on the continent.
Well, can you give me a real life city that I could equate this to?
I guess you could say like New York City.
Yeah,
New York City.
I would say it's like New York City when everybody's coming through Ellis Island.
Okay.
It's big time. You're getting a bunch of different immigrants and everything like that. But in this aspect, it's just a bunch of different people trying to make it. They're working in the mines. They're working for all of these guilds. They're either well-developed sorcerers or just starting apprentices, and they know this is the place I can learn more.
Right, and this is also the forerunner of modern technology.
Yep.
Is in Thistledown. So if you were an artificer or somebody that was more technologically based, Thistledown would be the place for you to go. If you were a wizard or a sorcerer, there's a magic academy there.
Yep.
There's the Hall of Heroes, like we mentioned before. They're essentially a guild of adventurers, monster hunters, whatever, that think that they can save the city better than the town guards or the government in the city itself.
It's almost like vigilantes,
Yeah. As far as people go, the most prominent heritages or races, whatever you want to call it, would be halflings and gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
They make up each of them respectively make up about 25% of the city. The least populated would be, I'd say, the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
Only because the dwarven population was just decimated in the Ruination, the collapse of the Dwarven Empire.
Yeah.
So, unlike Elder Scrolls, where the dwarves just disappear, a lot of our dwarves just blew up, and they took out a large section of the continent with them. as we mentioned in our previous video, people still hold a grudge about what the dwarves did.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of have, they kind of have some prejudice against them. But dwarves are still a part of the city.
Yeah.
You will encounter several dwarves who have made it into prominent positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have we have several races or heritages that are going to be specific to Drakuva. We have 4 of them listed for the Kickstarter right now, which would be the Akuktuk, the Fable Folk, the Ursarak, and the Kuvakir.
Yeah.
We have more in mind that are in the works, and we hope to release them with expansions or stretch goals and things like that.
Yeah, and even if we don't get those like going forward in subsequent adventure modules and things like that, we're gonna introduce them. So they're coming. One way or another, they're coming.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal for us would be to transition Drakuva from D&D into our own system and continue to expand the world. So that's going to mean, we're going to be making our own creatures and our own playable races and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you opened the door for it of these new playable races that you just mentioned. Would you 3 mind saying just a little bit about each of them? What are they? What?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
It's
and then also which one's your favorite?
So I guess I can start here for a little bit. If you followed us for a long time, actually, you can go back into our YouTube. We did a one shot as Ursarax, which actually was a really good time, really fun.
It was a good time.
Because Chris was there?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that's the main reason.
But so the Ursarax is pretty much like a bear race. They have 3 different sub races or different variations that all hold different skills, but they themselves don't really know of their own creation myth. They don't have any idea of how anything started. Really, nobody does. But many people who have studied the ageless realm and things of that nature note their fey-ish touch, as if that is where their magic really gave them life. So a couple of them are a little bit different. We kind of base them off of regular bears. So there's one that's kind of like a polar bear. It's meant to be a survivalist in any situation. It's used to a frozen tundra-esque world where everything's pretty much out to kill you, and if you're not looking out for yourself, you're gonna die. Then we have ones that are more like brown bears that, again, kind of similar but a little bit different. They have a little bit more strength, things of that nature. So those would be your fighters, your big berserkers, tough stuff like that. And then we have the black bear, which is more stealth focused. They're used to hiding in woods and everything along those lines, and big opportunistics. That's kind of at least
good cross skills.
Yeah. That's at least a very low end breakdown. There's tons of lore for them on that. That was actually one of my favorite characters that I've created through our races. Was when I played our Ursarax. It was just different because they were known in Drakuva to be these fighters. Like, if you want a good mercenary, you're going to get an Ursarax. They're gonna do well. They're gonna survive. They can eat less rations and still hold their power and everything like that. So when you're in a marching army, an Ursarax is where you should be.
Yeah, the Ursarax, the way that their structure, like their society is structured, is that when you're a young Ursarax, like you reach a certain age, you are basically sent away from your people.
Yep.
because they believe too many of them in the same place will basically, they'll just eat the land.
Yeah.
They'll eat it themselves out of house and home. So they send their young off, but their young come back and they bring with them technology and stories and magic and things that they've encountered. And they're supposed to go off into the world. A lot of them find themselves in positions as adventurers or mercenaries, sell swords. They make excellent soldiers, as Neil had said, because they have good survival instincts. They can last a long time. They have a lot of stamina, things like that.
Yeah, like the one downside to having them in an army is that they'll eat all your food, but then once they've eaten all your food, they don't have to eat for like 10 days. Yeah. So,
Yeah, there's costs to be paid.
I guess I'll go with the.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on, Cody.
Okay.
I just want to know how in depth your bear research went. To make sure that these
Cody
bears
is
are
a bear.
I am half.
So was it just? Did you guys just sit around and watch Cody?
For when we had to do research on black bears, yeah.
Yeah, they had footage I didn't know about.
Sure.
You knew about it. You asked us to record that.
You had a ring light, man.
That's Cody's OnlyFans.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you have in depth discussed the Ursurek. Let's pick a different one from your list of new playable races. Let's try the Fable Folk. And I'm gonna ask Steve.
Okay. So the Fable Folk are a race that I kind of developed. They were kind of the idea of it was so basically there isn't really like any race that comes from the Ageless Realm. The Feywild doesn't really have a race. Like they have the elves in D&D. When we were thinking about developing this as like a Dungeons and Dragons thing, it's like the elves come from the Feywild, or the elves are related to the Feywild, but it's kind of tentative as to how they come from there. Like they exist on the material plane, but they are also have some kind of relationship to the Feywild. And I was like, why is there not a race that is? And this is before the latest D&D book that came out about the Feywild, where they introduced a bunch of races from there. I was just like, why is there no race specifically from that sort of plane of reality? So I came up with the Fable Folk as sort of a race that comes from there, and they are sort of a more they're like a living organism that is both like a humanoid, but also they have some plant-like features. They have like greenish skin, and their arms are sort of made up of like these like somewhat thick vines. Like they're like these vine-like tendril things that sort of turn into hands at their ends, and they have these big leaf-looking wings that they fly around on, and they're very small. They're like maybe 3 feet tall at the highest, and they kind of can become affected by the Ageless Realm itself. So if they find themselves in a more corrupted area of the Ageless Realm, they themselves will start to become corrupted and turn into these more twisted versions of themselves. And in order to protect themselves from these sorts of things, they sort of form into little groups and join up with courts of the Ageless Realm, which are made up of stronger beings from that plane that can protect them and nurture them and keep them safe. Because they're a smaller race, they're not like they're very magically adept. But they aren't like very physically powerful. At least that's how I imagine them. They could become very physically powerful. There's nothing stopping someone from making a fighter or a monk with this race or anything like that. But at least as I think of them, they're like these small little guys who can just do a bunch of magic and focus a lot more on their connection with nature and the natural world than other races would. So that's kind of the concept for the Fable Folk.
Yeah, I like them a lot. I think it's a good addition into the game. It definitely brings a different aspect to it.
Yeah.
So that was a very good explanation about Fable Folk, Steve. I think we should move into one of the next new playable races you guys have created. You want to pick which one, Neil?
Ooh, which one I want to do? I mean, Cody, I'll
Yeah,
give you the
Cody.
pick because I've already said the Ursarak, so
Yeah.
you get the choice of the last two, and then I can take the last one. It's a hard choice for you.
It is a hard choice for me. Very hard choice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll go with the Kuvakir.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm surprised by this, folks.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I wanted to break the mold and not just go with my normal routine.
Gotcha.
So the Kuvakir are interesting. They are kind of like quarter giants. They are the result of intermingling between dwarves of a city known as Karak Uvul. Sorry.
There's a lot of caves.
There's a lot of caves. From Karak Uval and Uvul, and that was a dwarven city where there was like volcanic forges and smithing places. And after the Dwarven Empire collapsed, the city remained itself. It was unharmed. And it was kind of like the bastion of dwarfdom, I guess you could say, until they were conquered by giants. And these giants are known as Baal giants, and they are similar to fire giants, probably more akin to like Norse Muspelheim giants, And they have since captured the dwarves that live there, and they force them to basically be their servants and work underneath them. And the Kuvakir are the descendants of what would be like half giants and dwarves. So the Kuvakir have skin and hair features that are probably more akin to like a fire Genasi.
Yeah.
More earthy, stone-like, with some heat coming through them. We wanted to come up with something that was a little that was unique. We didn't want to just have like the Azure, we wanted to do something different. And the Kuvakir are primarily desert dwelling. They live around the outskirts of Karak Uval, and they want to free their people. So they tend to form in clans or in bands, and they travel around the world, but they all have the goal of trying to free their people and liberate the city.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty cool. They have more survival skills, more they're not your typical dwarf, we can say that.
Yeah,
they're certainly something different.
Yeah, they're much more charismatic, I would say. Like they're much more like friendlier than your normal dwarves. They're much more open about like learning about new cultures and traveling to new places. Like they don't have any, like, despite them calling Karakuvul their home, they don't have any set, they don't really settle down in any one place themselves as these little caravans. They just sort of travel around and are they're mainly merchants more so than anything.
I would say the merchants, that's a part of it. They definitely want to, we have one featured in our adventure, Cold Iron, that we did for Apotheosis. The main NPC, his name is Urkis, and he's of the Kuvakir. And Urkis is in a city called Port Kaysen, and he is an established member of like the crime organization there. And he's kind of the mission giver for the quest, but he is also, you find out eventually that he's motivated by trying to free his people, the quest pertains to retrieving things that he believes are going to help his people.
Yeah.
So they're a cool alternative to playing dwarves, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's definitely that aspect of a nomadic merchant tribe that no
Yeah.
matter what, the reason why they became merchants and the reason why they're so invested in learning other cultures is to try and get their homeland back. You know, it's networking. It's they're getting these resources to use ultimately to claim a home. You know.
Yeah, and as mentioned before, the dwarven population in Drakuva is pretty much decimated. A city like Thistledown might have a couple hundred dwarves, in comparison to what would be thousands of other, humans or gnomes or whatever. So their numbers are really few. So the Kuvik here don't even have that aspect that they can call back on to say, oh, well, we're dwarves too. You should come and help us. They don't have that network.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're trying to, they're freedom fighters.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Shawn.
I mean, that leaves the mighty Akuktuk.
I think that leaves
Yes.
the last one.
The last one, the Kooktuk.
The crown jewel of the
Yeah, I
races
mean,
of Drakuva.
the Kooktuk was one of our first races that we really actually formatted
Yeah.
and made 5e compatible and really just kind of gave a world to. And so the Kooktuk are pretty much a penguin-esque race, right? So they nobody, even themselves, again, because they are a storytelling culture. They pass down. They don't have any written language. They pass it all down through stories. They just know that they've come from the north of Drakuva. That is all their stories tell. Some, tell from hunting of the whales and the whales moving to the Drakuvan land, that they've settled there, as they're big, pretty much hunter and gatherers. But in their journey to come into Drakuva, they encountered another giant race, which the name
Isa giants.
Yeah, the Isa giants, and they are, I guess if you wanna label them something of familiarity, they're like a frost giant, right? They call cold weather their home, and these Akuktuk do too. That so much that they actually had a conflict amongst each other. That the Akuktuk, as war, well, not so much war bred, but such strong and hardy survivors. They actually outmaneuver and outperform these frost giants, fighting them back and claiming their land as their own. The Akuktuk, I mean, besides saying how hardy of a race it is, they're just known for their what's the word, ingenuity to combat other aspects, other outside unforeseen problems that they've never experienced. All of their weapons are handcrafted to fit what would many other races seem as flaws to be able to hold a weapon. It makes their weapons better.
Yeah, they've adapted to their environment and to their anatomical limitations.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they're not as dexterous as other people, so they need to rely on trade. And so Neil had mentioned before that they are whalers, that they hunt whales. They do. They have an affinity for beast handling and for management of other animals. So oftentimes you'll see a Kuktuk with much larger animals as their mounts or their pets even. And it's in that way that they have maintain their livelihood, and also they have things to trade. So they might hunt whales to eat them, but they'll sell the oil in another civilization for lantern oil or whatever.
Yeah.
And they kind of, they really live off the land. So they make good druids, they make good rangers. They're kind of matter of fact. They don't have a lot of they don't have like a filter when it comes to like, oh, I'll try to be pleasant, or I won't say that because it might offend somebody. The Akuktek are very, no, this is what I think, or this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They say it.
Yeah.
So they don't make the greatest diplomats, but they are brave. And as Neil mentioned before, in our lore, which will be expanded upon as we get further north in Drakuva, that there was a conflict in which the Akuktek basically saved the day and kicked some ice giant ass. And so we always have we have that image in our head of the Akuktek, like sliding down the hill to go fight some giants.
Yeah.
And like they're the same size, like as a regular, like penguin, roughly. Like,
yeah. They're basically just intelligent penguins, but they're very cool.
7 foot tall intelligent penguin.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could make that if you wish, but
if you're about that, if you're about that life.
But no, the Akuktek is a very nature-based, whatever they're in, they'll find out how to survive it. They'll find out how to make it livable. And it's kind of one of those things. They either survive or they don't, and that's how they speak. It's very black and white. It's very, there's no real big Akuktek poets out there. No big troubadours, but not to say, who's to say there's no bard Akuktek out there,
Yeah, and that is something that we do in the actual description of them, is we say like, hey, if they grew up in like a town or they grew up in a different society, they obviously have influences of other peoples and other cultures. They could be a lot of different things. You could have an Akuktek wizard. But coming straight from like their tribe setting, probably less likely.
Maybe like a shaman,
I would say maybe more so like a druid or a sorcerer, maybe even a warlock. But the idea of like keeping a book and writing spells and everything is very anti their culture. It doesn't really gel with their society. And their description of things too, like they might say, you might be like, oh, well, the easternmost hill is where I'll meet you. And the Akuktek would be like, well, the hill furthest east where the sun hits, and like everything is much more in depth to them. So sometimes communicating with them can be a little difficult. So they're certainly less charismatic than we said, like the Kuvakir. But they're unique and they're cool, and I love them.
Yeah, we had one person play in Akuktek when we first created them.
Yep.
In one of our live streams for Extra Life, which was a great time. Yeah.
So, just to go through, of these 4 playable races you've created so far, we'll add that in there. Which are each of your favorites? Which are you most excited for the people to see?
I mean, the Akuktek are out there. They're still my favorite. I mean, they're out there. We've had them out there for a while. Yeah. I love the Ursarak too. I think they're really cool. If you ever wanted to play a bear,
it's a good choice.
Yeah, it's a good choice. The other races, I think they're fun too. So I'm kind of torn to say what would be like the thing I'm most excited, but I guess I'll give the vote to the Akuktek. I think people will enjoy them.
Yeah. Use a lot of words to say that, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree. Like, each of them has their own reason to be excited about them. Yeah, exactly. But each of them has their own reason to be excited about them. Like, the Akuktek are just like cool. They're just like these strong little penguin guys. There's a lot of diversity in the Ursarak. The Kuvakir are a really cool dwarf subrace that focuses on things that you don't really get out of dwarves from like classic stuff. And the Fable Folk are a race that is a new take on natives from a realm made up of magic. Of the four of them, I would probably say I'm probably more excited about. It's really hard because they're all really good for like different reasons. Probably the Kuvakir, because I think that it'd be interesting to see how people view that take on dwarven culture. And personally, dwarves aren't like my favorite race or anything like that, but like it'd be interesting to see like. I'm sorry, it's just
They just pop out of the ground.
yeah, I know.
They say there are no female dwarves.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be in that camp if it wasn't for you two always telling me that I'm wrong. But yeah, like I think that it's an interesting new take on dwarves, and I'm interested to see how people, go into it.
I guess that leaves me. I think.
I mean, we don't really have to hear anymore.
I say we could just
continue on. But no, I think I'm gonna have to say it was really fun playing Felbjorn, my Ursarak. I think that race is pretty cool. There's been a lot of different like throughout all of tabletop RPGs. There's been bear-esque races. But I think our Ursarak really develops a more in-depth version of anything that's out there, and it's not even close to anything that's really out there either.
Yeah, and we also definitely tried to give them like their own culture and their own beliefs and traits, so that they're not just like, oh, I'm just a animal humanoid, like it.
Yeah.
They have a cool creation story. They debate about the creation story, like Neil was mentioning. They're not just bear people.
Yeah,
they're a very diverse group of creatures, and like each different variant specializes in different things, and I think that that's kind of a cool aspect of it too.
They're cooler than your average bear.
Yeah,
you can say that.
Yeah,
they're smarter than your average bear.
Smokey the Bear is definitely an Ursarak.
Sure. What about Yogi Bear?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, he's a
we'll include him.
And what about Boo Boo?
Oh, definitely Boo Boo.
Okay. All right.
He's the brains behind the operation.
Hey, Boo Boo.
I just gotta ask the hard hitting questions.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say Ursarak, but I will say for everybody who's watching, if we hit certain stretch goals, I think you will be thoroughly impressed with some of the other races that we have lined up.
Yeah.
The Muppet Borns.
No.
No.
No Muppet Born.
No.
Do you want to tease any of these possible stretch goals?
There's an avian race that we're bringing in. That they have a really interesting creation myth that deals to one of our deities, creating them to kind of smite the dwarves for going against the beloved sky and worshiping things of that nature, and confining themselves in caves and dungeons and stuff like that.
This god is a sky lord, and his wife is a god of like light and dawn. She's referred to as the Dawn Princess, and he's the sky lord, and he has 3 crimes that the dwarves have committed against him and his wife, for what he believes 3 crimes. So he created 3, like one race, but 3 different subcultures to basically punish the dwarves was his idea behind it. One of which would be, if people came from Crow's Perch, they back us, they are going to get one of these sub races.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, so as much as we talk about the Ursarak, imagine you take the Ursarak and make them into birds. Basically what we did. And it's very cool.
The Berserk.
Berserk. Yeah, so we were kind of having like we wanted to break down, you know, obviously like in 5th edition you have like the Aarakocra, you have the Kenku, you know, you have different avian type people, and we wanted to have like one avian type group of people, but they could, depending on their different sub races, they could be more of like a predator bird, like a bird of prey.
Yep.
They could be more of like a scavenger type bird, you know, like a vulture, things like that. So they're going to be different than what's been seen already in D&D. And as we said, you know, we're trying to make it a big part of the mythology and the lore of our world, so that it's unique to the world.
Yeah.
And then we also have another one, the Sedeska, which are kind of like a water type people.
Yeah, they're a race that exists in deep water, and they're actually a race of shapeshifters, who are able to take on different forms by submerging themselves in water and altering their form to disguise themselves as members of other races so that they can move about, you know, surface cultures without being seen, because in their natural form they're kind of these terrifying, like half humanoid, half like deep sea, like anglerfish type creatures who, you know, if they were to be seen around town, people would be like, oh man, that's a monster, kill it. But they are, despite their horrific appearance, they're very curious and very open-minded to a lot of things, and they're naturally inclined to want to experience different cultures and learn as much as they can. And so they use their abilities to change themselves into other beings so that they can, you know, explore the surface and learn as much as they can about, you know, the things that exist on the surface.
Yeah.
They go undercover, you know?
Yeah.
They're deep undercover.
Sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much, I think, it for our races. We've gone through a lot right now. We have enough time, I think, for one last question from you, Shawn. Your big one.
Sure. Right. So I've had my daily life in Thistledown, but I want to ask the three of you, as a collective or as an individual, however you want to answer it. What do you want to say to the people who have backed so far, and to a prospective backer?
For anybody who's backed so far, thank you so much. No matter at what tier it is, if you've just donated $1, you're maybe not getting anything from this, or you're seeing where it's gonna go. It's amazing. I think right now we almost have 40 backers in general who've actually donated some level of monetary money. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's, you know, sometimes more than I would, you know, we come from such a small following right now to get 40 people who, most of them really haven't seen much of our other stuff, or are now seeing a lot of it. It means so much. What are we at?
36 backers.
36.
And there's probably like 60 something people that are following the project
it.
That we hope we can convince to tag along for the ride. Because this is certainly, you know, we've said it in the last video, but, you know, even if this campaign doesn't flesh out for us, if it doesn't reach its goal, we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to make the best product we can make, and we're going to continue to make the best world that we can make, because we really enjoy doing it. And so the support we've already received is just awesome, and any other support we can get is so appreciated. And we've had people from our community that we've worked with that have reached out, like Adventures of Galder, Apotheosis, Crow's Perch, Crispy's Tavern. We've had a lot of people, you know, put the word out for us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
we're going to keep going. And I think we've mentioned it before, and I'm fine with saying it again. we are eventually going to make this our own system. It's going to be our own game, our own world. So really, this is kind of an investment. This is like phase 1.
Yeah, this is like phase 0, basically. This is like
Yeah.
we haven't even developed our system yet. We're just making this as a precursor, basically, that we might come back to at some point as like, for our system that we develop as, oh man, return to Thistledown and see how it looks in our.
Oh, we totally got to convert it. We will.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, of course we will. But
100% will.
But yeah, we are beyond appreciative for everybody that's supported us so far, and for people that are kind of on the fence or are following us and aren't really sure. This is absolutely a quality product. This is absolutely something that like if it gets funded, it'll really be an amazing module. And even if it doesn't get funded, again, we are still going to keep on working on this and other projects that take place in the world to further flesh it out and to show that, even if this doesn't make it, we're still going to work hard at making our projects the best that they can possibly be.
Yeah, I would just say to anybody out there who is now seeing this for the first time, or you've been watching all of our updates, you've read through everything, and you're still just on the fence, you will not be disappointed with what you get. We have the breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, right? Ask us if there's something you guys need to know or you want to know, you're curious about. Ask us. We're waiting to talk to people. We're really excited about this, and it's been a labor of love.
Yeah.
So, really, come on.
And and if you're
for the ride,
if you're someone that isn't familiar with us and you aren't sure because we're talking a big game about how this is going to be such a quality product and everything like that. We've got a lot of stuff on Drive-Thru-RPG that you can pick up for free and look at and see what kind of content we've created in the past and know that Thistledown is going to be at that level or higher in terms of its quality. So
yeah, it's worth it. You get all the monsters, all the items, all these races, all the classes, which we talked about the classes last time. You get a world setting and you get a story.
Mm-hmm. What Wizards of the Coast book out there right now has all that?
That's
in one version.
Yeah,
one book.
That's been multiple books for what Wizards is. Has
and
been
not to bash on them, but that's just how they market it. Because it's more profitable to split everything up. We're old school. We want everything right there for you to have.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be worth it to. Even if you just get the PDF now. Part of this fundraising is to allow us to get everything set up for print. And you can just invest in the PDF now and know later on you're going to be able to get the book. And just donating to this project makes it that much better. And you get your name on it. You get credited for helping us put this in motion. I don't know many other places that do that. So
yeah, and this would be... I mean, I think we said it before, but this is like a total dream, from longtime gamers playing in a van outside of our friend's house, with bottle caps as miniatures to now making our own book, is really cool. And we can't wait to get our hands on an actual copy and to hear what people think of it and hope everybody enjoys it as much as we have enjoyed making it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think that wraps it up for us. We could, of course, ask 50 billion more questions, but we will be making more update videos. Shawn, thank you so much for bringing some great questions.
Yes,
thank you so much.
I hope I asked the right ones.
I mean,
you did, and you asked great questions, and you gave us some time, which is awesome. I want to give a shout out to Frank. He's helped us out quite a bit. He helped us with the last interview. He made a video for us. So again, thanks to everybody that's been supporting us, our friends, family, and now hopefully some new followers and people that want to come and play around in Drakuva with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us through emails at tabletoptotality@gmail.com, through the Kickstarter itself.
Yeah, you
We're
can
all over the
comment
place.
right there. All three of us can
Yes, please,
respond to you.
because it's the only social interaction Cody gets.
Yeah, it's sad. It's really sad.
I just stare at my phone waiting.
Waiting for notifications.
Yeah, and all of our contact information is also on our website, which is tabletoptotality.com. So you can just find us there, and if you have anything that you want to say or ask us, you can
put everything in the corral below.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, folks. Thanks again for coming, and can't wait to do our next one later on and get this update all set to go as we get right down to the nitty-gritty of our Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
Right. Everybody have a good one.
Peace and chicken grease, bone ponies.
Get ranched.
So.